I can admit them all. I can admit them all. Yeah, there we are. There's still people coming in. Good morning, everybody. Those of you that are joining, we are just going to give it a couple of minutes as people start joining virtually. There's yeah, lots and lots to join today. We've been really well supported as far as this event is concerned. So please just give us a moment whilst we let all the attendees in. Good morning, everybody. We are at 70 attendees, so we are still expecting a significant more number who had joined or had signed up, and they are still coming through. I'll give it till 9:35, and then I'll start at exactly 9:35. First rule of employability: punctuality. So we'll start at 9:35. Okay. Welcome everyone to the day. Thank you for attending. This is the first opening door sessions we've hosted, and we've been really delighted with the number of registrations. And if you do hear a little sort of ping in the background, that's someone else joining. And for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes, we've had people coming through thick and fast. So this is fantastic. So thank you. My name is Zahoor Ahmad. I am the head of social mobility, inclusion and belonging for the Co-op Group, and it's my part of my team that has supported the development of this. But it's been a real a broad cross section of people that have been come together to build this toolkit out. So you'll hear from a variety of them. But first of all, it's my duty to do a bit of housekeeping. So there aren't any scheduled breaks, as we wanted to keep the overall session to time. But of course, feel free to take them as you need to. If you do have any questions, put them in the Q&A. We've disabled the chat, but there should hopefully be time at the end of each speaker session for any of the questions. And if we don't get to them all today, we will send out responses after the event. So, first of all, today isn't about the co-op or specifically jobs at the co-op. It's about employability more generally, and some of the tools that we've developed that we hope can really be of use to people, whether it's in their own job search or helping others. Now, we've been fortunate to secure some great speakers who I'll introduce in just a second. But to set the scene, myself and then Lorna will talk briefly about the co-op and what has led us to deliver this session today. And then we'll move on to the main events, which will be the demonstration of our employability toolkit by Suzanne and 2 fantastic speakers in Harshal and Sally. So a bit more about our speakers who'll be joining us later before I move on to the co-op. Suzanne Brown is Head of Learning and Training at Omni and brings over a decade's experience in training and a deep knowledge of interactive learning. Harshal Gore is Director of Workforce and Economics at IGD, where he leads Feeding Britain's Future, which is an industry-wide initiative focused on attracting more young people into the food sector. And Sally Ely is head of the CIPD Trust, which was set up to harness the expertise of the HR profession to support people get good jobs and succeed in work. Now, a few words about the co-op. Now, given that you signed up today, I'm assuming that you know a little bit about us, and we're a pretty recognizable brand across the UK, but you may not know everything. So a little overview. We employ over 50,000 people right across the UK and Northern Ireland, predominantly in our frontline roles in food stores, in logistics warehouses and in funeral homes. But we also have a legal services arm and an insurance business. We also have our sports centre in Manchester, where many of us are today, which includes all of the roles you might immediately think of for a head of function, such as finance, HR, marketing, but also many of you may not know about roles such as food product development and the team which supports our Co-op Academy Trust. This means we're in communities everywhere, and we are firm believers that good work should be available to you wherever you are based. The other thing you may not be aware of is that Co-op is a member-owned organisation. That is to say that we're not dictated to by shareholders, but it is our members who shape what our priorities are. Anyone can become a member of the co-op, and you can then have your say in how we run our business. So those blue cards that you see in stores aren't just to get great deals. From a diversity and inclusion perspective, I lead quite a small team, but a mighty team, who deliver activity right across the diversity, inclusion, and social mobility spectrum. And we have a real strong focus as far as socioeconomic background and social mobility is concerned. So what led to this, and what's going on as far as the macro environment is concerned that is feeding this type of the importance of this type of work? Well, we're in a real moment of change as far as the world of work is concerned. Across the UK, the labour market is being reshaped by economic uncertainty. Yeah, we see it every day on the news. Changing employer demand, new technology, and the growing impact of ill health and inactivity on people's ability to enter and stay in work. Now, all of these stories, just over the last month, these stories have come up and you see them in the news, whether it's about NEET or whether it's about the politics behind some of the labour uncertainty. It is really never been more of a focus for us than it is at the moment. So the recent UK labour market data actually shows us that employment has been broadly flat. So vacancies have fallen from their post-pandemic peak, and employers are becoming more cautious, and with many focusing on cost management and productivity than growth. At the same time, young people not in education, employment or training remain a significant concern, and people with fewer qualifications continue to face lower rates of entry into work and lower job security once they get there. So when we talk about employability today, we cannot talk about it in narrow terms. This is not simply about whether an individual has the right CV, the right interview technique, wearing the right suit or dress, or the right level of confidence. Employability is shaped by systems as much as by effort. That's an important point there, about the systems behind it as well as the effort. It's shaped by the quality of education someone can access, the networks they inherit, the expectations they grow up around, and the financial resilience they have when taking risks, and the degree to which the employers recognize potential in people who do not fit their traditional mold. The example I sometimes used to give is Bob used to do this job and we're looking for another Bob. Yeah. And that often drives a lot of bias in decision making. What matters deeply, I think, for people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, though, is that because while talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. So for too many people, the journey into work is not a straight path. It's shaped by barriers that are practical, cultural, and structural all at once. And and so many of us have really, really strong and resonant stories around that, and I'm no different. Now, some of those barriers are obvious. The cost of transport to interviews, the inability to take unpaid internships or low-paid work experience, limited access to digital tools, quiet study space, mentoring, or professional networks. But for some, it's the financial pressure to earn immediately rather than invest in long-term learning. And certainly in the generation that I grew up in, this was a real important point. For others, it's caring responsibilities, insecure housing, or living in places where good jobs are simply less visible and less accessible. Evidence on social mobility in the UK continues to show that geography, childhood poverty, parental occupation, and educational opportunity still have a profound impact on the life chances people have. But some barriers are less visible and perhaps even more powerful because of that. It is those unspoken rules of professional life, so knowing how to speak in certain rooms, knowing which opportunities are worth pursuing, feeling that you belong in environments that are not built with people like you in mind, being judged not only on your capability, but on your polish, your accent, your confidence, your familiarity with workplace norms, or whether your story feels recognizable to those making decisions. Research and public polling continue to show that many people believe their background still affects how far they can go in their career. And that bias in recruitment and the limited networks remain significant barriers to progression. And that brings us to privilege. Well, I was going to say my favorite topic. It's not my favorite. It's actually probably my least favorite topic, because it's something that's really, really misunderstood. Um, and really what it means is that life, it doesn't mean that life has been easy for some people and not for others. It means that some people move through the world with fewer of those structural obstacles. It means being more likely to have networks that open doors, schools that build confidence, homes that create stability, and safety nets that make risks possible. And that's an important point, actually, that we find around the safety nets as far as risk is concerned, but that also has a knock-on effect as far as happiness and general well-being is concerned as well. It means being able to recover from setbacks more easily because there is support behind you. And how often have you heard the term, most people are only 2 paychecks away from destitution? And if organizations are serious about employability and fairness, then we have to be mature enough to talk honestly about privilege, not to induce guilt, and it shouldn't be oppositional. Yeah. But to build understanding, because if we do not understand how advantage works, we keep mistaking proximity to opportunity for talent itself. So looking ahead, the challenge for organizations is not simply to prepare people for work as it is today. It is to prepare for the labor market that is becoming more dynamic, more unequal in some respects, and more demanding in others. As technology, including AI, changes the shape of jobs, the premium on adaptability, digital confidence, and transferable skills is likely to increase. But unless we are intentional, the benefits of those changes will be unevenly distributed. It's clear. Yeah? Those who already have access to learning, flexibility, confidence, and networks will be best placed to adapt. Those who are already on the margins may find that gap widening further. And unfortunately, we really see that at the moment. So what do organizations need to begin thinking about going forward. First, we need to shift from seeing employability as an individual deficit to seeing it as a shared responsibility. So too often we ask people to become more work ready without asking whether work itself is ready for them. We coach individuals to navigate systems that remain exclusionary. We help people adapt, but we do not do enough to redesign the environments that they're entering. Organizations need to examine how recruitment, progression, language, expectations, and workplace culture can unintentionally reward familiarity over potential. And we see this again and again in organizations where they are driving for example, for diversity. They have a very monocultural environment and they want diversity in that organization. However, the culture is not accepting of that diversity, and the stories are multiple of things that fail there. So we do need to look at it in more than one dimension. Secondly, we need to broaden what we actually value. So if we keep hiring for confidence over capability, for polish over potential, for sameness over difference, then we'll continue to recycle advantage. Now, it's really interesting throughout my career, one of the things that I was very, very strong on developing in myself, and particularly in my 20s, was that polish. Because I thought that is the most important thing, is that polish. And some of that perhaps you hopefully you begin to see as I'm talking. But that didn't come about naturally. That is something that was worked on because it was necessary, because that was what was getting me through those doors. So this means taking a harder look at the criteria that may appear neutral, but are not always fair in practice. It means questioning unnecessary qualification requirements and rethinking how experience is defined using more inclusive assessment tools and ensuring that progression is not dependent on proximity to influential networks. And one of the key things, one of the places where you see this a lot is where you have this kind of, we expect someone to have a degree. Why? Or we expect 10 years worth of experience. Why? Yeah. So it's questioning some of those almost default settings that we are building into our systems, which become exclusionary. And the phrase I always use is genuine occupational requirements. What are the genuine occupational requirements that you want to build out? So thirdly, we need to invest earlier and more intentionally. Some of these wars, if you like, these battles are lost at the age of 7 and 8 and 9. And we have to do more in those spaces. But organizations that will make the biggest difference are not only those that offer jobs, but those that create those pathways into those jobs. That means meaningful work experience, outreach, mentoring, apprenticeships, partnerships with schools and communities, and practical support that recognizes the real barriers that people face. If a young person cannot afford the train fare, cannot see anyone like them in the organization, or cannot imagine themselves belonging there, then talent alone will not be enough. Fourth, we need to measure what matters. If socioeconomic backgrounds remain invisible in our data, it will remain invisible in our decisions. Organizations should be thinking seriously about how they understand class, background, and social mobility within their own workforce, and how they use that insight responsibly to identify barriers, target action, and track whether opportunity is becoming more equal over time. This is one of the reasons why we became the Co-op as one of the first organizations in the UK to publish their socioeconomic pay gap. Finally, we need leadership that is willing to be honest, and honesty that about what merit truly is, because merit is not neutral. And there are many places that I go and talk, and many of the people that I talk with say merit is actually, or a meritocracy is actually unachievable. But it certainly is not neutral. So we need to reproduce, we need to be honest about how we are reproducing the inequalities within society, within our own organization. Honest that inclusion is not just about who gets in, but who gets on, who feels they belong, and who has to work twice as hard to be seen as ready. So another thing that the data tells you is that you may well have organizations where you have a good cross-section of people from different backgrounds, including socioeconomic, but as you go up through the organization and get to the top tiers, that level of diversity decreases substantially. If we are serious about tackling inequality, which at the core of what we're talking about is the reduction, the erosion of inequality in society and in employment. If we're serious about that, then employability cannot just be about helping people compete in an unfair race. It has to be about changing the conditions of that race itself. It has to be about widening access to opportunity, reducing the penalties of those backgrounds, and building organizations that recognizes talent in all its forms. So because the question for organizations now is not whether inequality affects employability, it clearly does. The real question is whether we're willing to respond in ways that are equal to the scale of that challenge. And if we are, then the work ahead is clear. To move beyond good intentions, beyond the short-term interventions. That's the other thing that's actually really, really frustrating, is that you have periods where you have really strong progress, and then you have periods where the pendulum swings back again. And that is what, and that can do an enormous amount of damage. So we want to move towards lasting change that makes opportunities more real, more practical, and more fairly shared. So I hope you enjoyed the session and take something useful away from it. I'll pass on now to Lorna, who's going to give you a very quick overview about why we're delivering this event and where you can find out all of the relevant links to the toolkit and future events. Lorna, over to yourself.
Thank you, Zahor. Hi, everyone. So as Zahor mentioned, I'm going to briefly touch on our work in social mobility and why we've created the toolkits. It's going to be a really very brief overview to keep us to time, but you can find me on LinkedIn if you've got any more questions. So as Zahor mentioned, we're a member organisation. What you might not know is we're also a campaigning organisation. So every year at our AGM, our members vote on the things that they want us to take action on, whether that's something that's specific to how we run our business, such as how and where we source our products, or something that is more important to wider society. So we've campaigned on everything from tackling loneliness to climate justice to violence against shop workers. And in 2021, our members voted for us to take action to tackle inequality in society. And this was the start of our social mobility campaign. If we could move to the next slide, please. So I won't go through every item on this slide, but it just shows some of the key activities from each year since that 2021 mandate from our members. In that time, we published 3 research reports, which you can find on our website. I'll share the details in a second, including The Good Life, which is a report that we published just last month in collaboration with the Sutton Trust, who are a leading social mobility charity that you might have heard of. And that report examines the link between social mobility, happiness, and well-being. We've also had a real focus on diversity data within our organisation, including asking our colleagues about their socioeconomic background. And as Zahor mentioned, we've now published 3 socioeconomic pay gap reports, alongside the reporting that we already do on gender, ethnicity, disability, and most recently, sexual orientation. And later this year, we'll be revising the social mobility commitments that we first published in 2023, which are focused both on our external campaigning work and the actions that we'll take internally for our colleagues. So if you're interested in learning more about any of this, you can find most of it on our social mobility pages, which I'll touch on in a second. Or as I said, just please get in touch with me. Next slide, please. So in terms of the toolkit, I won't steal Suzanne's thunder, who's up next, as she'll give you a really great demo. But the original toolkit, which you may have seen if you've been in our jobs board, if that's how you found us today, was developed during COVID. So like many organisations during that time, we had a huge amount of applications, and we were really conscious that we were sending out lots of kind of polite decline emails to so many people. And we wanted to do something to help those people so that we could do more than just essentially say thank you, but no thank you. And so that's where the origins of the toolkit started. In my role as social mobility manager, I'm often asked about opportunities that we have at Co-op to support organisations or individuals through work experience or supported work placements, because we are out there in communities. And I totally understand, given our reputation and where we are and our campaigning stance, why we get so many requests. And I know there's people on the call today who I've previously spoken to about this. As an organisation, despite the fact that we are out there in communities and we are a big organisation, we do actually have quite limited opportunities in this space at the moment. And just to give you some kind of reasons behind that, our food stores are often very small, with only 1 or 2 people on shift, and they carry out the whole range of duties. Our funeral care business is highly regulated, as you would imagine, and our depots don't employ anyone under the age of 18. So given this scenario and the fact that we are quite limited in what we can offer as an organisation, we wanted to take the opportunity to extend the remit of the original toolkit that was created during COVID and tailor it more to the groups that in time we hope to be better able to accommodate within our own organisation. So because we are out there in communities, we want to help people in their job searches, whether that leads them to a job at Co-op or not. We're also really aware that while we may all have found the jobs that we want to do at Co-op, that there are many people looking for jobs in roles that we just don't have in our organisation. So we wanted to make sure that we're doing what we can to support those people too. So for this reason, the toolkits that we'll take you through aren't focused on Co-op or our own recruitment practices, but they're more generic and are designed to help people get their first kind of foot on the ladder and help them with those job searches, which, as Zahor said, we all know is increasingly difficult at the moment. It's also really important to say that through Suzanne and her team, we can track the most used toolkits and topics so that over time we can evolve them. So that might mean that we change some of the content or that we merge them together, some of the toolkits together. So we're always monitoring that usage and we're open to feedback and suggestions as to how they can be improved. And at the end of the session today, we will share next steps and let you know how you can do that. So next slide, please. So finally from me, where to find the toolkits. So everything that I've talked about can be found on the web link that you see at the bottom, which is coop.co.uk/social-mobility, including the 3 research reports I mentioned and our pay gaps. Apologies for this slide being a little bit uninspiring, but I thought it was easier than trying to switch to the web pages in the session. So if you go to coop.co.uk/social-mobility, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see this photo of one of our funeral care colleagues, and you'll see the toolkit section, which you can see in those links down the side of this slide. So you'll see it initially talks about the employer toolkit. So the employer toolkit is a resource that we've created to share some of the learnings in the work we've done in social mobility with other employers. So that toolkit is for employers looking to take action on social mobility within their organisation. And are just looking to kind of see what others are doing, take some of the learnings that we've had over the last 5 years, and because we found that really helpful when we were first starting out, because the focus on social mobility is still quite unusual within organisations. The employability toolkits are the kind of second bit of that in the toolkit section, and there you can see these different links that you can see down the side of this slide. So much of the content is shared across the platforms, but there are some more tailored pieces of content too for the different groups. And we've taken that through feedback and focus group sessions that we've run with different groups, as well as partners that we work with in this space. So 1 minute over, so I will pass to Suzanne to go into the toolkits and their functionality in more depth. So over to you, Suzanne.
Thanks very much, Lorna. Good morning, everybody. As has been introduced, I'm Suzanne. I have been working with the Co-op for probably the last 4 or 5 years, actually, partnering with the Career Hub and just trying to get it to the place that it's at the moment. I think it's been some really in-depth work that's been done to understand how Co-op can support various different groups. So it's been really good to drill down into the detail of that. I'm actually going to share my slides, so I'm hoping that they will now take over the slides that are on the screen, or you may need to, oh yeah, good, okay, I think I'm now sharing. As Zahor has talked about, there are lots of challenges in the market at the moment, I think. And so we want to make sure that the Career Hub is matching those challenges and trying to work with them. So before I go into a demo of the Career Hub, I thought I'd kind of give a bit of context as to what it's trying to do, I suppose. So the hub is very much about improving employability, and there's lots of tools on there, as I'll show you in a bit, that talk about how to get the practical tools like putting your CV together, preparing for interviews, assessment tests, etc., etc. But actually it goes beyond that. And when we think about what employability skills actually are, I think we need to frame it as, yes, it's those practical elements, but it's also about upskilling people. As Zahor's rightly talked about, there is an imbalance in people's understanding of how to approach the job market, and that creates, you know, an unfairness that we can help with, because employability skills, it's also those kind of soft skills, the transferable skills that people need, and they're the abilities that basically allow people to work effectively regardless of their background, their job title, the industry that they've been in. So whilst qualifications may help you get noticed, it's actually those employability skills that help you get hired, and then help you do well in the job. So in order to feel like you have good employability skills, I think that people need, first and foremost, an understanding of what they are good at. And when we talk about employability skills, it's those transferable skills or behaviours that can be used in any role. And I think having awareness of these is a really integral part of a successful job search, and obviously a successful job search outcome. They're not just skills and experience, and it is very much about getting people the right jobs. I always feel that when I work with people that are in the job market looking for roles, a lot of it is about the confidence with which they approach the market, and that confidence can be created or enhanced by an understanding of what it is that you are actually good at, and what you can bring to the table. I also think when we look at the Career Hub, we need to kind of reflect on the job market today. I'm very immersed in the wider job market across all sectors. The only word that I would use to describe it is muddy, to be honest. It's more competitive than ever. Roles are evolving really quickly because of technology. AI is obviously changing the sorts of roles that are available, and what jobs actually involve. And because of this, employers aren't just hiring for what they know, they're hiring for how people learn, adapt, collaborate. They're hiring for potential, basically. I just heard on the news this morning that the job market is vacancies are at the lowest they've been in a significant amount of time. What I would say is, on the flip side of that, again, being immersed in the market, people are getting jobs. People are still moving. There's lots of kind of shifts around the market. So it's all about helping people to understand how to give themselves the best chance. But just some thoughts on the job market. There's increased competition. So job applications across the UK are up 40%, higher in some areas, to be honest, because there's lots more people looking to move for various different reasons. As I've mentioned, technology means that people need to adapt, not only the roles that they're going into, but the way in which they approach the job market. Technology at the moment means that people can literally put a job description into Copilot and say, create a CV that matches this job description. Now, that's quite attractive to some people because it's a quick way of doing things. But my argument is, actually, if people are seeking a new opportunity, if they're in the job market, that period where they're putting their CV together, where they're thinking about what they're good at, is the best prep you can do for the stages later down the line. So the interview, assessments, etc. So we don't want to promote people just cutting corners at the early stages. We want to help them engage with it so that they're getting the most out of that process. And that's what the Career Hub can certainly help do. Another point on the job market is employers value adaptability because of some of the things that we mentioned, not only technology, but also just changing workplaces, changing roles. And the other thing is that a lot of employers are focusing more on attitudes and potential rather than just what their CV looks like. And again, to Zahor's point, that's a good thing because it means we stop having that kind of prototype bias where we're just templated on getting another Bob. We're thinking about actually what is it that we need out of this role right now, but also what do we need in the future? And again, in order to get that right, candidates have to be engaged with that as well. They have to think about actually what is my potential? What is the way that I approach the jobs that I'm in? So one of the things that the Career Hub is aiming to do is get people in touch with this. Think about what is it that they are actually bringing to the table, not just giving them the tools to get the interview, but actually giving them the tools to get the job and then be good in the job. And when we look at employability skills, this is just an example, actually. These are, research has shown that these are the top 6 competencies that employers are consistently looking for at the moment. We can break this down in detail, and obviously they mean different things in different roles, but actually this is one of the main areas that the Career Hub aims to support, is by getting people an understanding of where they sit currently with skills like this and how they can then improve them. So it actually helps them to develop as well. And I think it's about connecting people with, actually, it's not just about having those skills, it's about being able to demonstrate them as well. So we want to aid people to be able to create examples of where they've used those skills. We want them to be able to show hard evidence from their experience. We talk a lot about competency frameworks and behavioural-based recruitment. It still is based on the premise that the best predictor of future performance is past behaviour. But it doesn't mean that they have to have had that job before. It doesn't mean that they need to have had that job title on their CV. It just means that actually when you break down the roles into their component behaviours, people can show evidence that they've actually used those behaviours elsewhere. And again, what the Career Hub will help them do is practice all of this, practice the examples, practice how they will talk about that to an employer. And it also aims to avoid some of the common mistakes, as we've talked about already. Some of the mistakes are focusing purely on the qualifications or the job roles that you've had. Another real mistake is not properly matching their application to the role that they're going for. I always advise that people have a master copy of a CV, which has lots of different information on. It's not one that you would send out as is to an employer, but it does have everything on there. You've kind of connected with your strengths, and then from that master copy, you tailor your applications. And again, this is what the Career Hub can help do, because it can hold all of that information for you. Another common mistake is not prepping for interviews. And again, the Career Hub is very focused on helping people to do that effectively. Interviews are often cited as the most stressful part of finding a new job. People are put on the spot. Most interviews, dare I say it, test how good someone is at interviewing, rather than testing how good they are for the actual job. So people are naturally nervous about this. And again, the Career Hub aims to support people with that. And ultimately, I said it at the beginning, I personally believe that one of the biggest challenges to people getting jobs is their self-belief, is their self-confidence in their ability to get the job and do the job. And so what we've tried to do at Co-op is create something that helps over time to build that confidence and build that self-awareness. So I thought it'd be just useful to give you a bit of context on how we've decided what we're going to use with the Career Hub. What I'm going to do now is just briefly stop sharing and then move so that I can show you the actual Career Hub. So bear with me. So I'm hoping lots of you, if not all of you, will have had access to the Career Hub, and certainly after this webinar, you will have access to this. But this is what it looks like. And as Lorna mentioned, it varies slightly depending on the specific platform that you have joined. And we've tailored it to make sure that there are messages that are specific to those groups. But ultimately, there are core elements on the platforms that I'm going to talk through you now to show you what it can offer. But this is what it looks like. There are thumbnails on the front page, again, which differ slightly depending on the platform. But I'm going to go through the main things that we find people are using, and actually based on feedback from the questionnaire that went out prior to today, the things that people have been asking for most. So the first stage of applying for a role is obviously putting a CV together. Some people have got CVs that they've had for years and they just kind of build on them. So every time they're looking for a new job, they just add their latest role to it, which is fine. It's a baseline, but actually we want people to be using this, as I've said, as that starting point of self-awareness. So what you can do on the Career Hub, if people don't have a CV at all, then you can create a CV from scratch, and it literally will just take you through step by step what you need to do, which elements you need to include. There is full accessibility on the hub, so you can have audio descriptions, there's written descriptions, there's video content. There is kind of guidelines broken down into bite-sized chunks for each stage of this, so that if people are nervous about what to write, it can give them guidance on what to do but at the same time it keeps it relevant to the individual. So this isn't about creating a generic AI generated CV. It's about allowing individuals to connect with what it is that they bring to the table. So the CV Builder is a really good starting point, but actually what people really find useful is what's called the CV Checker. And what the CV Checker is doing is using a combination of AI baseline, but also technology from ATSs across various different sectors. So applicant tracking systems are heavily used, and I'm sure they're used at Co-op to sift through the initial sort of long lists of CVs, and they have very specific ways of working. So what we've tried to do with the CV Checker is amalgamate all of that. So you've got generic AI content, you've got specific ATS mapping technology, but also we're keeping that human eye on it as well. So how do we make sure that CVs are reflective of the individual that that it's representing? And this is because I think there is a real fear in the market. I was with a group of hiring managers yesterday who were talking about actually they don't trust application forms anymore. They don't trust CVs because people can, as they put it, cheat. They can just throw it into Copilot or Claude and get something perfect out of it. So there's something we've got to do to inspire candidates to try and connect with this stage and make sure that actually they're giving themselves the best chance of getting the right job for them, rather than just their CV being relevant for everybody, I suppose. So the CV Checker is basically about analysing the quality of your CV. So you upload your CV. I've got a number of different ones on here that I've been helping people work with. You upload your CV, and then you can basically get a detailed feedback on the different elements of your CV, whether it be the overall presentation of the CV through to the specific content. So I'll give you an example here. It will literally just go through all of the different elements and talk about what's going well in the CV and what could be improved. And this breakdown allows individuals to work through it at their own pace. They can change their CV and it can be rescored. They can work on it over time, but it just gives people confidence in the CV that they have, but also connection with it. So people are really understanding what is on their CV, which ultimately is what we're trying to gain for people. And again, every section is accompanied with both written text, but also a video or audio description if that's easier for people to use. So that's the CV. The other element, the other kind of practical tool that people find really useful is what we call the interview simulator. And so what can happen once you've uploaded your CV, it can actually take you directly into what's called the Interview 360, which has used AI to generate an interview experience. It's a virtual interview experience, and you get feedback based on your performance in that online interview. So you can do the interview, you can generate the interview based on your CV. So it literally just look at the skills that you put into your CV and kind of second guess the sorts of things that you might be asked to interview. Or if you go into it through my tools, the interview simulator, you can pre-populate a specific type of interview. So if someone's going for an interview and they know the sorts of questions or competencies they're going to get asked about, they can populate them here, or you can choose specific questions on there. And as I say, what this does is gives you advice and tips on how to interview, but it also gives you specific feedback on how you have performed in that. And again, it breaks it down to the content of what you've spoken about at interview, but also things like your eye contact, your pace, your tone of voice. We found this to be really, really popular. And I think it's popular because, again, people want to practice interviews, but it's nerve-wracking. And actually, if you're practicing with an individual, sometimes that can make people feel a bit overwhelmed, or they feel like they're not necessarily getting the objective feedback that they need out of it. So this is just a way of really providing that safety to practice interviews whilst also giving really detailed objective feedback at the same time. So they are, as I say, probably the most used tools from a kind of setting up your employability. But there's also things on here like taking aptitude tests. So if you know that you've got verbal and numerical tests that you're going to be taking as part of your assessment, there are sample ones that you can take here that again give you feedback, and you can get information on where you've maybe fallen down and then go and retake the tests. There's also, going back to my presentation at the beginning, there's assessments that you can do on your career choices, on your core skill set, your core behaviours, and these all allow you to get that self-awareness that we're talking about, so that people can really approach the market in a way that is relevant to them. And what we've done with Co-op in creating these platforms is we have basically a pathway that people can go on. So if I go back to the main page, there is an employability award that people can work to. So on this thumbnail here, we click on your employability, it will take people through multiple stages, 20 tasks that they can do to complete this employability award. And I think just in today's world of gamification and immediacy, people wanting those short, sharp, bite-sized chunks of learning, this goes down really well. And what we find is that people, once they've gone through the employability award, once they've thought about the different elements of their personality and their skill set, is they are far more confident about approaching the job market. So this kind of takes it a little bit wider. It's all about making sure that you are giving yourself the best possible opportunity to do well in the recruitment process. And actually, when you log on, for those of you that have logged on previously, or when if you are going to log on to this, the first thing that will pop up when you join the Career Hub is what's called a Career Pulse. And this is just a very quick self-assessment tool. So I'll just go through. You basically rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on a series of different statements. And this obviously ties into understanding yourself, understanding where your development areas are, but it also, depending on the scores that you've given, it triggers a learning pathway for you. So you will get sent push notifications from the Career Hub as to elements that particular elements on the hub that you might want to focus on first to build the things that you're maybe less confident on. So the hub has a huge amount of information on there, but actually what we aim to do is channel people, focus people in on actually what they are able to do that's going to make a difference to their career progression or their job search, if that's what they're doing. So as I say, and you'll obviously be able to have a look through all of this in your own time and think about what is most relevant to yourself or people that you're helping support. There's lots of different things on here that can help upskill. What I would say is one of the other areas that we find people are using long term, so things like the CV checker and the interview simulator tend to be situational. So if someone's going for a role or they're looking for a promotion, they tend to hone in on those areas because they're really practical tools. But actually, we have a long-term plan of upskilling and employability development with this Career Hub, and that's all connected with My Learning. On My Learning, there are various different things. There are business skills, IT skills. So you can go on there if you're not particularly adept with Excel, for example. There is a number of different Excel courses that you can go on. And again, you can kind of start a pathway that starts you at beginner, takes you through to advanced. So lots of things that you can that can help upskill your actual technical skills. But there's also an e-learning suite, and this is constantly being updated. It is really very established. It's tapping into lots of different contents, really comprehensive, and there are a number of different kind of starting points, I suppose, with this topics that kind of again trigger a learning pathway for you. So if we look at, I don't know, I'll just stick in problem solving. It will give us some examples of starter e-learns that we can look at. So if I click on that, there's one here on critical thinking and problem solving. That's just a basic kind of explanation. But again, what that does, once you've completed that particular e-learn, it will then trigger future programs, kind of taking you on to the next step. So what's happened behind the scenes is those pathways have been defined to make sure that people are actually developing. So they're not just going in and randomly picking e-learns based on the first thing that pops up in a Google search. They're actually based around self-assessment, self-reporting, so that career pulse, but also the e-learns that you've previously taken. So they aim to not only help upskill people, but give people that perception that they are developing, they're actually on that pathway that's building to a greater awareness in some of these areas. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different categories that you can look at here. And the e-learns are a mixture of, again, written content, video content, audio. Some of them last a couple of minutes. Some of them last, I think the longest ones are kind of half an hour. So again, really manageable for people, but they just allow people to kind of hone in on the things that are either interesting to them or things that they feel they need to improve. So what we advise with people is that you take all the information that you get from the feedback from the hub. So the feedback that you get on your interviews, the feedback that you get from your CV, the feedback you get from the self-awareness tools, and focus on those, because it's all about building skills that you need to develop. So I've kind of gone through some of the main areas on there. What I don't want to do is go through every single section, because I think that that's something that you can explore for yourself. The dashboard on the front, we have information on the top. So this carousel here is a kind of moving carousel that just gives you access to various different content that the team have deemed relevant. So we have direct links to the Co-op career sites, but also we can update that. So if there are particular initiatives going on, then the carousel on the top might change so that people are directed towards that. Okay, I feel like I've kind of talked you through the basics of the hub. I think it'd be really good to open it up and see if anyone has any questions that they want to ask, or if anyone's asked any in the Q&A already that I can answer. And as I say, it'd be really good for you to access it yourself so that you can see how it feels when you're actually using it.
There's just a couple of things that have come through, Suzanne,
Okay.
around the tests. And so there's probably some that you might not be able to answer because it's kind of why organisations use them, because often they can feel harder than the job that they're applying for,
Yes.
and a very demanding aspect of it that can seem quite full of barriers. But it would be really
Yes.
interesting to get your take on that as someone external.
Yeah, and this actually is something that I'm quite heavily involved in. And whoever asked that question, I completely agree. I think that there is an issue with the recruitment process for a lot of people, for a lot of organisations, in that the methods that they're choosing to assess are either not relevant or they're not predictably valid, which means they're not necessarily testing for what you need them to test for. But more importantly, from an inclusivity perspective, they don't feel fair. And I do think there is a movement against this. If you think back, 10, 15 years, full day assessment centres, 2-3 day assessment centres were really commonplace. I remember doing that for one of the first jobs I ever had. You don't see that as much anymore because candidates won't accept it. They don't want to necessarily focus on things that aren't relevant to them and that put them under unnecessary stress. So I think actually as employers, we need to be really careful to make sure that the methods that we're using to assess in the interview process are relevant. And there is definitely a movement towards this because, quite frankly, as I say, candidates are dictating it. They're not applying for roles where they know they're going to be, really pulled through a series of overly difficult and feel like they're irrelevant processes. But I think that there are still tests that are done. There are lots of things that can help buffer the effectiveness of an actual interview. What I would say, actually, my advice is for people that are approaching the job market, if you find out you have tests or situational judgment or scenario based assessments, get as much information as you can about them. So push back and ask the employer, what exactly is this going to involve? What is it looking to test? And how can I best prepare for that? I think, we're in the recruitment market now is very two-way. Gone are the days when candidates would accept just blindly turning up for an interview, as I did for my first job. Actually, I turned up thinking it was an interview and ended up staying there for a day for a full assessment centre, had no idea. Candidates won't do that anymore. We lose out on good talent by having unnecessary processes. So that would be my advice. But I think it's pushing back and making sure as a candidate we know what's expected of us, as an employer making sure that we are reflecting what we're looking for with the methods we're using.
That's really helpful. Thank you. We've had another question around, I'm assuming this person is talking to someone who's looking for a job themselves or will be in the future in the job market. And Grace has asked, once someone's completed one of your e-learnings, do you think that could be a talking point in an interview or a brief mention in a CV? What are your thoughts on that?
Great shout. I mean, I don't necessarily think, probably not on a CV, because I think your CV is that initial touch point, but I think it's a great talking point to interview. What employers want to hear about is that you are motivated and that you are committed to learning. And that you want to kind of improve your own skills. Employers shouldn't be looking for the finished perfect article. They should be looking for people that are keen and want to kind of make the effort. So I think it's a great shout to talk about what you have done personally to self-improve. And this obviously is a really good example of that.
Yeah, I agree. And Dawn's asked if the mock interviews that you do using the hub can be recorded.
Yes, they are recorded. They're recorded.
Perfect.
And you can access them to play back so you can see yourself. So you're absolutely able to get your own feedback as opposed to just the feedback from the AI system.
Perfect, thank you. And I suppose just one last question that was on my mind while you were talking. So I've recently supported my husband through a redundancy process, and it is a tough jobs market. I think no matter how long you've been working. At the moment, it's quite a challenging place to try and get a new role. It can be quite overwhelming, I think, looking for a job, and feeling like that is what you've got to do every single day. You should be just looking for jobs, tailoring your CV. How do you suggest people kind of approach that job search in a way that maintains momentum but doesn't overtake their entire lives and make it feel like that is all they're doing?
Yeah, really good point, because statistics show that people find it easier to find a job when they're in a job. And I don't mean that to sound negative. The point I want to raise on that is that when people are in a role and they're looking for another role, the pressure is slightly off. When people are going through a restructure, redundancy, or they're out of work, it is incredibly stressful to look for a new role. And that stress can take over your life, but also it can really hinder the effectiveness of your job search. So my practical advice to people is always break it down into bite-sized chunks, as we've talked about with a lot of this. Make sure that when you're looking for a job, you're not spending 6 hours, 8 hours a day, literally trawling job boards. That is good. That is doing you no favors at all. I would always ring fence how long you're taking. I say to people frequently that I'm coaching, do it for a couple of hours a day. And then, do you know what? Go off and do something else that you enjoy, because actually the more positive and confident you are going into the process, the better. I think there are boxes that you need to get ticked early on. So getting your CV together, connecting with who you are and what you're good at and what you want. That's something that people, particularly if they are really desperate for a job, they start to drop. And I always say to people, don't focus on what you can do solely, focus on what you want to do. You should, regardless of your situation, you should have the mindset that the next job that you get is going to be the perfect job for you. Not the next job that comes along, not the first thing that comes back to you. The reality is, yes, you might be in a hurry to get a job. I'm not saying that we should, be putting off jobs until that kind of, unicorn job comes along. But if you go into something with a positive mental attitude, you are far more likely to achieve it. So break it down into manageable chunks, be really positive about it, get your ducks in a row, CV, make sure that you're connected with what you can do, register on the job boards, and reach out to companies and people that you think you might be interested in working with, get your LinkedIn profile up to date, and then it's just about taking it piece by piece.
That's brilliant, thank you. And we've just—
Is that what your husband did, Lorna?
Yeah. He did. To be fair, he did. He went to the gym. He made sure, because he started off just going at it all day, every day, and it's just not sustainable, is it? It's really not sustainable. So thank you.
It's
for
really
that.
demotivating as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple more questions. I think we've got time. So one from Amy says, how would you go about discussing or explaining in your CV or interview that if you've been unemployed for a long time, for whatever reason that might be?
Yeah, so it is something that when I talk to employers, I talk about it in terms of what we call a red flag, but that's not a negative thing, okay? It's a red flag because employers have this unconscious bias that more often than not leads them to look for things like that on a CV. So one of the first things, employers are scan reading CVs. Often what they're looking for is job titles, gaps, kind of a rough overview of your career history, i.e. not the right things. Okay. And we want to move away from employers focusing on the wrong things. We want them to focus on your skills and what you bring to the table, rather than them trying to second guess why there's a gap in your CV. So my advice is always explain as briefly as you can if there has been a gap. Now, be careful. You don't want to talk about protected characteristics on a CV, because you don't want to leave it open for people making stereotypical or prejudiced decisions about you. But don't stress too much about it. I would argue that actually, if you've got a CV that has gaps on it, but before actually you can notice those gaps, what you can see is all the behaviours that you can bring to the table, then I'd be far more focused on that. So if you've been out of work for a number of years now, so actually your most recent role was say 5 years ago, for example, what I would probably do is at the top of your CV, have a key skills section. So don't go straight in with your employment history. Have a key skills subsection where you talk about those things that I've been touching on, the behaviors that you bring to the role, the things that you are good at, because that will focus the employer's attention before they look at that gap.
Yeah, brilliant advice. And I think we've touched on AI, but we've had a question in the chat to say, what's your opinion in terms of using AI to enhance your CV from a recruiter's perspective? What do you think? I mean, it's a big topic, isn't it?
So it is a big topic. Yeah, and I think that AI is something that's scaring a lot of people, myself included, if I'm honest, because we don't know where it's going to go. We're in a real period of the unknown. One thing we do know is that it's not going anywhere. It's not going to suddenly backtrack and then we're back to where we are. And I think that employers that want to eliminate the use of AI in the recruitment process or in the workplace are erroring, because actually it can help us. But it's getting the balance. And so what I would suggest, if you are looking for work, be really careful about how much you are using AI to take that kind of work away from you, because there is software that will give employers an immediate assessment as to how much AI has been used in that application. It's not an exact science, but it's really accurate, and it will say this CV looks like it is 80% generated by AI. So I wouldn't say don't use it, because I think it can be really helpful, but I would use it to help you understand better how you want your CV to look. So if you use AI to maybe phrase something, or you want to position something in a certain way, take that AI information and genuinely think about, does this seem relevant to me? Like if someone was asking me this question, is that how I would answer it? And if it's not, rework it, because you need it to feel relevant to you. So use it as a buffer, use it as a support mechanism. Don't use it as a reason that you don't have to do any work, and don't use it to take over all your jobs, because it's no help to you. If you haven't connected with your skill set at the beginning, you're going to screw yourself over in the interview.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that is it for questions in the chat. So thank you so much, Suzanne. That was so helpful. Really great. Oh, hang 2 seconds. Let me just see if we've got one more. Oh, one last question quickly. How have you seen international professionals with strong experience from outside the UK successfully overcome barriers related to language or non-UK work experience? And what practical steps would you recommend someone in that position would take?
Yeah. So again, I think it goes back to when you focus in on the skills that you have rather than the specific country-based experience that you've had, you open up your opportunities a lot more. I think that again, I'd probably go back to my advice about the gaps in the CV. If you have if you only have overseas experience, I'd be focusing on talking about what that experience has given you, the skills and the strengths that has given you, and have that key skills section at the top of your CV. I think that when you get to interview, which hopefully you should, because if you've got the right behaviours and skills for the job, it shouldn't matter if you're able to work in the UK. It shouldn't matter whether you've got overseas experience or not. I think when you get to interview, it's very much about having an open conversation. So, for example, if there is a language barrier and that's not going to be an issue in the role, it's asking the employer how they can help support that, but equally what you're going to do to help overcome that as well. So not shying away from those conversations, I think, is really important, because when we don't lay it out on the table, that makes people make assumptions about things, and oftentimes those assumptions can be wrong. There's an increasing amount of companies who are embracing the absolute excellent experience we can get from people who have had their training and experience overseas. There are still employers out there who do have those unconscious or conscious biases. As difficult it is to say, my argument there is if someone has those biases, you probably wouldn't want to work for them anyway.
Yeah, agree. Right, I think we're out of time. So thank you, Suzanne. That was
We have
great.
one hand up. I don't know whether we've just got a minute.
Yeah, I think mics are disabled. So if you've got any more questions, I've seen there's another couple we just haven't quite got time to get to.
Okay.
If anyone can pop them in the chat, we will make sure that we get answers to you in the follow-up communications that we send out after the event. So thank you so much, Suzanne. That was brilliant.
No problem. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, now we are going to pass to Harshal Gore. So Harshal's going to speak to us about IGD and the work they do to promote careers in the food sector through their Feeding Britain's Future programme. So welcome, Harshal.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Great. Okay, so yeah, just thanks for having me today. I'm Harshal Gore, Director of Workforce and Economics at IGD. I want to talk to you about an exciting industry initiative today called Feeding Britain Future and why it matters so much for young people, for employees, and the long-term future of the food and consumer industry. So yeah, very excited to be here to talk to you about this very exciting initiative. If you go to the next slide. So yeah, IGD is a charity for the food and drink sector. So we essentially bring the whole food system together, and we work with the food system to work on social impact initiatives, and we provide lots of insights to the food and drink sector as well. And then 12 years ago, we launched something called Feeding Britain Future, which was at the time a country was facing major unemployment challenge, and it became a very successful movement. So off the back of that, we felt we needed to relaunch Feeding Britain Future. Saying that, so that was an unemployment crisis many years ago, but the challenge hasn't gone away. So today, the unemployment among young people remains too high, and few young people are moving into work. And at the same time, we are also seeing a really aging population. If you go to the next slide. So we're seeing 16% more fewer employees aged between 16 and 24 compared to 1992 in employment. The average employee age is now 42 years old, up from 38 in 1992, and 3 times more employees aged over 65 in 2024 compared to 1992. So we've got a number of challenges happening here, where we've got challenge of not enough young people coming into the food sector, and we have an aging population as well. Yeah, so in terms of, so that's one challenge. The other challenge is we have got a bit of a perception challenge with the food and drinks sector as well. So as an industry, we have a challenge around how we're perceived, but also our reputation. So if you look at us, this chart, it shows the food and drink sector versus some of the other sectors. And we have got a challenge where young people and their parents see the food sector as potentially not a place to work. So that's something else we need to be considerate as we go forward. You go to the next slide. So you may have heard recently the government launched an interim report into the NEET crisis. So this is where young people that are not in education, unemployment or training. So there's nearly 1 million people in that bracket right now, which is obviously really concerning for our society and the country as a whole. And this is causing lots of issues, not as well as not the young people coming in this industry, but also there is an issue around it's costing the industry, the UK, a lot of money as well for having lots of people not in work. So Alan Milburn, who's working independently as part of the government, has launched this interim report. The main report's coming out in September. But the interim report concludes that Britain doesn't have a youth motivation program as an opportunity problem. The fastest way to tackle is to build a first rung of career ladder through employer-led work experience mentoring and entry-level opportunities. So what he's saying is we've got an opportunity problem. We need to create an opportunity for young people to get into this career rung. And how do we do that? Through employers leading on work experience mentoring and entry level opportunities. So we need to show up as a food sector to create those opportunities for young people. If you go to the next slide. So this is where Feeding Britain Future comes in. So as IGD representing the food and drink sector, earlier this year we thought let's relaunch Feeding Britain Future, which is something we did 12 years ago, and have this focus on how do we get more young people interested in the food sector, so it creates that a future workforce for the food sector, but also start tackling some of these neat challenges as well. So our ambition as part of the Feeding Britain Future program is to provide experiences of work in every secondary school by 2030. So this is the food and drink sector offering experiences of work for young people. The aims are to mobilize. If you go back, keep on the last slide, please. Thank you. The aims are is to mobilize the scale and diversity of the food system. This food system is massive in terms of its scale. So how do we show that? How do we show up as one to young people? To equip young people to work and progress in the food sector, to show those multiple options and career paths for them, but also address the neat numbers and inspire the next generation of young people coming into food. So there's a real opportunity to the food sector to show up as one, offer these opportunities to young people, and really start solving some of these neat challenges for the government as well. If you go to the next slide. So how are we going to do that? Is we are looking at different ways of intervening young people at different age groups. So currently we offer school workshops as IGD, and we bring in volunteers from the industry to support that. But we're also looking at things like modern work experience, where how do we provide like modern, flexible and agile work experience for young people? And on top of that, we're looking at campaigns and comms as an industry, working with career services, but also with the more older age groups. We're partnering with universities as well. Go to the next slide. And work experience is a really interesting topic for us as IGD, and working with the industry. The industry see this as a really, really big opportunity where we can offer something different to young people. And this diagram shows in terms of a model of work experience going forward, where we could offer introduction and inspiring type models to young people, where it's high volume and low depth, whereas apply and demonstrate is low volume and high depth. So what that means is apply and demonstrate is that classic 1 week or 2 week work experience, whereas introduce and inspire is maybe 1 hour virtual call, or 1 hour or half a day at a depot, at a warehouse. It may be a more flexible model of work experience going forward. And we're working with a company called Careers and Enterprise Company, who are funded by the Department of Education to work out what this looks like for the food and drink sector. And we're piloting this year with eight organizations to look at this model and then scale it in 2027. Go to the next slide. So really exciting. We have launched this program this year in the last couple of months. And one of the key aspects of this program is how do we get commitment from the food and drink sector and beyond to get behind helping young people. I'm really pleased to say we are now over 70 companies that have committed to this program, including Co-op. And we are looking to scale that with the food and drink sector over the next couple of months to 150 companies. If you go to the next slide. And we launched Feeding Britain's Future as an initiative on the 4th of June. We had the CEOs of Tesco, the CEO of Sainsbury's, CEO of Greencore. We had the Director General from Department of Work and Pensions, and Coca-Cola and Morrison's all presenting on why supporting young people is very important for the industry, and why the food and drink industry wants to be the leader in supporting young people going forward. You go to the next slide. And this just shows we had an article in the Grocer a couple of weeks ago around where the food bosses or the CEOs of the food industry have really come together to say, right, we do need to tackle this problem as a collective rather than individually, and we're going to be working with IGD to make that happen. Go to the next slide. So in terms of what does commitment mean from an industry point of view, or a commitment company, we are asking for kind of a number of things this year. So first is provide your logo, which is quite simple. But the other things we are asking for in terms of commitment is providing volunteers for these school workshops that we're offering around the country. And these are virtual workshops. And Currently, we're aiming to be hitting 20,000 students this year, mainly year 7, 8, 9s in that age group. And our aim is that in 2027, we should be hitting 50,000 students. So that's number one commitment. Number two commitment is really leaning into this work experience opportunity. So looking at these flexible ways of work experience for young people. And we want these 70 organizations to be offering at least some level of work experience by the end of this year and going into next year. And then finally, in the autumn period, IGD is launching a campaign to young people and parents and teachers around why the food and drink sector is the best place to come as a sector. So we're looking at these our committed companies to provide case studies and videos and really nice assets where we can showcase the food sector as one to young people through things like Instagram, through TikTok, and those type different models as well. Go to the next slide. And I think that's it. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what we're trying to do. But yeah, very, very exciting initiative. We've got, as I said, over 70 companies now committed to the program. Our aim is to get to every secondary school by 2030. And ultimately, our aim is if we can just give one opportunity for a young person to have a wonderful experience with a food and drinks company, that would be a really, really a great goal to achieve.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Harshal. Before the event, we asked people if they had any questions for anyone that was going to be speaking today. So I've just got a few questions to ask if that's okay.
No worries.
So let me pull it up. So the first one is around someone who got in touch to say that they've got a background in IT infrastructure, data centers, technical operations, and they're keen to move into kind of warehouse logistics types work. What do you think are the opportunities for progression within the food industry for someone with that type of experience? And what would you recommend that they focus on to make themselves kind of like a strong candidate to move into the food sector?
It's a really, really good question. Well, the number one response is there's lots of opportunities in that space. And I think coming back to what I was saying earlier, I don't think we've, as a food sector, has really showcased all the opportunities that we've got in the food sector. Is massive opportunities in terms of showing up in terms of how best in that area. I would say just look at the different job roles that are available in that space and see how you can match your CV to the kind of specifications that they're looking at. But also look at when we're doing these campaigns later this year, we are going to be focusing on specific roles, and we'll be showcasing those specific roles. And in the past, we've had focus on like logistics, supply chain, that side of it as well. So look out for people that are already in those roles today and see how you can get kind of inspiration from them.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. I think you're right. I think it's not until you join the food sector that you realise just the vast variety of roles and career paths on offer. So I think there's more that we can all do, isn't there, to shout about that. What's the best advice you'd give to someone looking to explore a role in the food industry? And what do you think are the kind of key skills that are required for anyone working in this space?
It's a really good question. So I think someone who's looking at coming into the food and drink sector, you need to show passion that you really like food and drink. So I think, especially when I'm looking for roles here, even at IGD, I really like when I see candidates that are really passionate about the food and drink sector. They're passionate about food and drink and eating, where's things come from. And because we all eat and drink food, we're doing it on a daily basis. So I think that passion's really, really important. In terms of where to find roles, I mean, literally just go into ChatGPT and write who's top 100 companies in food and drink. There's so many different roles out there and companies out there, and obviously come to IGD as well, because we can support you in terms of where to go and who to speak to.
Brilliant. And then a very topical question has just popped up in the Q&A from Claire. So she said, with the social media ban for under 16s being implemented in 2027, as announced this week, how will young people access these sessions that we've just spoken about, as TikTok and Instagram will be removed for under 16s? So career conversations obviously need to start before young people leave school. So how will we IGD, and I suppose us as an industry, adapt to these changes to ensure that we're still reaching those young people if those platforms are taken away?
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
question. Relevant as well. Well, the good news is that we're already speaking to partners around reaching young people in a consistent way. So we're already doing these school workshops, and they're all online, but it's all done via very kind of strict models, and so that's a really good path. There are also career services that teachers, parents use, things like Unifrog, who IGD are speaking to as well. So yeah, it has to be done in a careful and considered way, but there are definitely paths to engaging with young people and getting them inspired into the sector rather than going via the social media. And you know, the classic work experience, which I mentioned earlier, IGD just ran a work experience here for 25 plus young people from year 7, 8, and 9. And it was just great to have them in the office and really fascinated by the food and drink sector. So yeah, there's different ways to get to them outside of social media.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that might be it in terms of all the questions that we've had. So unless there's anything else, Harshal, from you, just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. And we will make sure that we get any questions that come in after this session to you so we can get back to everyone on the call. But thank you again.
No, thank you for having me. And yeah, please let me know if you want to get involved.
Perfect. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, May. Okay, so we're going to move on to our last session now, which is with Sally Ely. So I think Sally's on the call.
Sorry, struggling with technology. Yes, I am
That's
here.
all right.
Hello, Lorna. Lovely to be
Hi.
here.
Thank you. I can't see you, but I'm hoping everyone else can. But so the way that we're going to run this last session with Sally is, as we said, we had lots of questions that that have been sent in advance by some of you who've joined the call today. So we're going to do it as a bit more of a Q&A session, and then there will also be a little bit more time at the end to ask Sally any questions. So thanks for joining us. I wonder if you could just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and a bit of an overview of the work you do.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here and really interesting to hear a bit of what's gone before as well. So, yeah, my career has been in the last 20 years, and it's been longer than that, let me tell you, really focused in working in skills development organisations, purpose-led organisations that really focus on helping people in some way, shape or form get into good jobs and then progress within them. So I currently work for the CIPD and I head up the CIPD Trust. For those who are not familiar, CIPD is a membership organisation for HR professionals. HR are, of course, the ones who recruit, develop, train people within organisations. And what we do at the Trust is support, we kind of are building a group of champions within the CIPD, within that network, who can help transform access to work for people who perhaps find it more difficult to get in because of one reason or another. So it's about changing perception, policy and practice within that sort of that group of people. My previous job to that was with City and Guilds, a skills development organisation, and I set up the City and Guilds Foundation. City and Guilds' purpose is all around helping people into a job, on the job and into the next job through their sort of development of their technical skills. So if you really, in a nutshell, the focus that I've had is about helping finding different ways of getting people to recognise their skills, help them get into jobs and then, you know, progress further. So yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. So in terms of your current role,
Yeah.
thinking about the people who've joined this call today, so are either looking for a job themselves or work to support others within their job searches.
Yeah.
Can you talk me a little bit more through about what your current team does, the kind of organisations that you partner with, and how that might be relevant, as I say, for the people on the call today?
Absolutely. So as I said, our main currency that we have is the HR profession, and lots of them want to give up their time, volunteer, do something alongside their day jobs. And they tend to make very good mentors. So we run lots of mentoring programs where we match up HR people with people who are looking for jobs on a one-to-one basis, and it can be for 6 months or it can just be for a couple of conversations, but that has an enormous impact on an individual looking for a job, because the HR profession are the ones who are really good at understanding what it is that employers are looking for and how people can best show themselves, if you like, when they're looking to get work. At the same time as doing that, of course, those HR people are understanding what are the real barriers that people do face, why there is a lot of bias, and some of it is completely unconscious and not for any bad reason. It's just that people don't know why, and so there's a kind of like a dual benefit there. We work also with a lot of charities and third sector organisations. We work with that help different groups of people get into work. We work with the DWP, with job centres. We've got to do loads of work across the criminal justice system. We work with the New Futures Network, with lots of charities that work within those people leaving prison and who've got convictions. Just because we need those people work with people who are looking for work. We can help find people who can help them get into work, not necessarily in their workplace, but in other workplaces. And so, the opportunity really is huge. So that's my main message for people on the call today. If you're looking for a job, Google us afterwards. I'm sure Lorna, you'll share the details because it could be that we can provide you with some help too.
Yeah. And on that topic with the job centres, I saw that there was an event earlier this week with, was it the Employment Minister? Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yes, yeah. So we've got this partnership with 9 of the job centres in South London, where some of our HR volunteers are going along and they are running sessions, doing one-to-one conversations, and just helping give that extra bit of advice to people who are looking for jobs. On Tuesday, we did a workshop for over 50s, because I say we do lots of different events focused on different groups of people, because people have different challenges at different times. And this one was focused on over 50s. We had 23 people who were looking for work, who'd been out of work for different reasons for a period of time. And we had one of our volunteers led a session around, all the kind of the basics, what you need to do to get yourself most, to stand out most in front of someone that you're going to be applying for a job with. And the Employment Minister, Diana Johnson, she came and she watched the session, which was really good, because she just sat in the corner, she observed it, she then asked questions, so she didn't make a big deal of being there, but that's really great. She is responsible for the policies and the government's approach to how we support people getting into work, and to be able to see and hear firsthand what people are finding difficult, what they struggle with, what's the reality really, and what all the confusion is. There's so much confusion out there as well. So it was really interesting, and of course that will help in terms of her understanding more those policymakers around her. We're going to be expanding that as well into other job centres. So we're starting some work in Liverpool shortly. So because we have members everywhere, we've got 160,000 members in CIPD. That gives us lots of opportunity to deploy their skills. So we're a bit of a broker in the middle. We are not experts. We find the experts and then we match them up with people who are looking for work.
Brilliant. So given all this work that you've got going on in this space, what do you see as being some of the biggest barriers that people are facing at the moment in terms of job searches? And would you have 1 or 2 kind of key pieces of advice for them?
So the thing I see, and I've always seen more than anything else, is confidence being the biggest barrier to individuals. So it doesn't matter what stage, whether it's somebody who hasn't ever had a job or whether it's somebody who's looking to get into a more senior job, people's confidence and their self-belief is the thing that gets in the way the most. But the great thing about that is that is something that can be overcome. And again, one of the best ways of doing that is talking to somebody else, getting help from someone else. So in terms of if anybody who's on the call who is doubting their experience, whether they've got what they've got to offer, whether they're going to get a job, ask for help, look for the help that's out there. As I said, we run this mentoring program where you can be matched up with, it's free, a mentor, and that person can help you understand just a bit like, so it can be really hard when you're in it and it's you thinking to be able to get beyond the, well, I don't think I have got anything to offer. All these skills don't seem to be cutting the mark. I can't seem to get anywhere with it. But actually somebody else breaking those things down with you, showing you, helping you phrase what you've done in a way that's going to look attractive to an employer, because absolutely everybody has something to offer and sometimes we just need help and advice. So that's the first thing I would say, that the barrier I see is that confidence gap. And I do want to reiterate, I will be careful of the time, that it isn't just people who haven't had a job for a while who feel like that everything's against them. Sometimes we do, one of our mentoring programs is for really senior people in the HR profession who face a particular barrier to getting progress further because they're in a group that's been perhaps overlooked or disadvantaged. And again, the exact same thing exists. Those people believe that it's something, they don't have the skills and experience. It's not that. It is just about framing. So that's the first thing I would say. In terms of other barriers, it is hard when there's fewer jobs around to be noticed. So being able to really make your CV stand out, make sure that your skills, not your CV, sorry, make sure that your skills and experience stand out on your CV is essential. And I think Suzanne might have talked a bit because I joined the end of her part, but there's making sure that your personality comes out, making sure that you yourself, every single person's different, has got something else to show. So showing that, making sure that you stand out amongst that crowded marketplace. I think that the barrier to there is about the fact that you are one of many. So think about, and again, it's hard to do it on your own. Ask somebody that you trust, who you know values you, to help you work out how it is that you can stand out and what things to sort of bring to the fore and, get in the way. Let me just, if I look at my notes as well, because there's another one that I thought I might, forget about. Feedback. That's the other thing. There's a lot of the time now, you can apply for loads of jobs and not get any feedback, and that is really dispiriting, because it just reinforces that first point where you can feel lacking in confidence and feel as if, well, what is the point of this? I'm not getting noticed. What I would say to that is go back to basics, go back to those, okay, right, I need to get some help here. If I'm getting stuck, perhaps there is something I could do that can help me just get a bit further up. Lots of organisations don't give feedback and never have. It's really disappointing. Again, I would say I see this at the most senior levels, where people who've got, trying to get into work, jobs maybe in their late 50s, early 60s, but have been made redundant. They're getting the same thing. It's just that's just the world we live in. So what you've got to do is go back to making sure that you are putting yourself in the best possible light, storytell well, get someone to help you, use AI and ChatGPT, I always get that the wrong way around, I think that's right, ChatGPT to help you, but don't rely on it. Don't, read it back, edit it, because that's the biggest way that I think people will make mistakes. They think I've done it myself. You put something in that you've written half well or badly, you put it in ChatGPT, you say, write this a bit differently. It sounds so much better when you're reading it back. You think, I can't make any changes. You have to take that as a starting point and then put your own personality on it, make it sound much more human. That's another thing I would say. This is about HR is human resources, right? It's about people. It's now talked about as the people profession. That's because we are people. People are still going to sit above AI, and they're going to be the ones that ultimately use it well. So whether you're a job seeker or whether you're an employer, using it properly and in a good way to help you. And you can even use AI to help you understand that as well. So jumped in talking about other things now, but I think those are the biggest barriers, the kind of standing out, working on your confidence and thinking about how you can keep going even when you feel a bit dejected.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. So as you mentioned, the trust is part of CIPD, and CIPD are all about championing work and better working lives. So from your perspective, what does a better working life mean to you, and what things would you advise people to consider either in their own job searches or when they're helping others into employment from that kind of better working life space?
Yeah, so it's a good question because it can sound like a really glib line, can't
Yeah.
it? You know, better work and better working lives. For me, a better working lives is all around getting into a job where you feel that your skills and experience are recognised and are valued and are right for that job, and that the organisation that you're working for, the people within it, you feel like you fit in with those people, and the practices, the working practices that go on there, you feel are fair and good and enable you to live your life that you're in at any one point in time. And for all of us, our lives change over decades. So, you know, when you're young, what's something that might be when you're just starting work, you might have a lot more flexibility with your time and can be able to do different roles that have, you know, that are different times of day, for example, like unsociable times of day. When you're a bit older and you've got kids, you might be absolutely fixed on having to drop off your children, or you might have a caring responsibility at some point in life, or you might have any other number of reasons that mean that you need a bit more flexibility. So finding an employer who understands that, because let's face it, we're all people and we're all going to have different challenges, and that includes employers and recruiters. And so finding an organisation where you feel like, yeah, they do understand that I need to do these things. I'm still, you know, it's a contract. So you do, you know, there is the part to play yourself. Of course, it's not all about just getting the ultimate flexibility, but not yourself giving back. But it is about having that two-way street. So yeah, for me, it's that's what better working lives means for me. And that means different things at different times. If you're when you're looking for a job, I think I would say do your research around the companies that you're applying for roles with, because not every employer values the same thing. You can tell from the kind of language that they use in their recruitment, their advertising, and the more you do it, the more you'll recognize the little clues that point out to you that whether an employer is likely to be one that is right for you. And let's face it, because we're all different things will appeal to different people. So this is all about you doing your side of it in terms of doing the research, doing your homework, asking other people what they think, and you know, in the media we know some organisations have got much better reputations than others. So it's that side of things I think is quite important when you're thinking about getting into the right job for you. You can get into a job and think that that's the end in itself, and sometimes it might have to be. You might need any job, but a lot of the time you can feel as if that getting the job becomes the actual goal, as opposed to getting the right job for you. And because that's where you're going to be spending your time, that's what's going to be, you know, enabling you to live the rest of your life. So you want it to be good, and you've got, you know, that's your right. And there's loads of organizations who support people with this, who can help. There's loads of brilliant employers. Of course, there are others as well that you might want to steer clear of. But that's where I feel like that research point is quite important. Absolutely. I would say, can I add one thing to that? No. So, you know, I'm like, you know me well, I'm like this. I would say, I know there's things like Glassdoor, but be careful of those kind of things. I would say, this is totally my own opinion. I'm not saying this on behalf of any other organisation, my own included. Just be careful, because it's a bit like people give bad reviews much more than they do good reviews. Yeah. And so sometimes I think, I mean, that's one platform, there could be others. So I'm not, you know, it's more those kind of things. Do a variety of research when you're looking for about what an employer might stand for, because you know, you'll need to get that balance so that you take a proportionate view on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. So both Suzanne and yourself have touched on AI in recruitment, and like you say, whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. We can't get away from it, and we also can't get away from everything we read in the media around the impact of work. So we've talked about recruitment and routes into employment, but there's also a lot around replacing those entry-level roles. What are your thoughts on this, and what advice have you got for anyone who's finding that a particular challenge in terms of the jobs, they're just not there, the ones that they're looking for in terms of those entry-level routes in?
Well, first thing I'd say is I'm not an expert on AI, so I can't. So again, I would want people to listen to what I say, but then go and look for other advice as well. I would say from what I see and what I hear from a lot of employers, there is a lot of noise out there around it, and there's a lot of stuff in the media that's not necessarily 100% true, which is often the case when something new happens and it becomes a really big deal. Of course, it's not going anywhere, and we need to embrace it. And I'm someone who's I have to force myself to use it because it's not my natural go-to. Although, as I said, I've realised it can write things much better than me. But I would say that just remember that go back to those basic principles of when you're applying for a job, your personality, you as an individual, is going to be what gets you that, not an AI filter tool, or well, the filter might stop you from getting there, which is why you need to make sure that you are putting your human piece on it. At that employability session earlier in the week with the employment minister I was telling you about, the person who was delivering the workshop was a chief people officer within the NHS. She runs a big NHS that she works a really big one in London. And she said all of their roles are looked at by people. So I think that now I know that's about recruitment as opposed to whether the roles are going, but I did not get the impression, and I don't get this from many employers I talk to, that all their roles are going. I feel like that's a little bit in the myth world at the moment. As you say, of course, there's going to be changes, and there are changes, but at the moment, there aren't that many. It's much more about people, both organisations and individuals, using it in the right way to help them. So just have that in your head. Don't let that be a barrier to make you think, oh, there's no point. That those jobs don't exist. Use AI to help you. So use it in the way that it can enhance what you're doing, but make sure it's human. And remember that there are many times people looking and reviewing and checking things at the end of the process. And again, that's where I'd say if you have a mentor or someone else can help you. Think about networks. Sometimes it can feel as if you haven't got a network to help you get into a job, but they're always available. It's actually finding the right way in. And again, that's where we run this program to support people. It's called Bridging the Gap, helping get into a job. But there's lots of others like that. And I know that a lot of the resources you've provided, there's loads of signposts. It's about sort of finding the right routes for you. And that's the same, I'd say, with AI.
Yeah. Well, that leads really nicely onto a question that's coming in on the chat from Victor, who says, many immigrants bring significant professional and management experience from previous careers, but may initially enter roles below their previous level to establish themselves in a new industry. Are there programs in place to identify such individuals and support their progression into higher responsibility positions that are based on their skills, experience and performance? So anything that you specifically know about in that space?
So yeah, that's a really good point. That is something where we've actually done a guide for employers on this in terms of how to in the refugee space, for example, how to help employers understand how they can recruit and retain and get the right people who've come from different countries and have got right to work in the UK, how they can do that well. It's the reason that we look at different groups is because different people have different barriers at any one time in life. Okay, so I would say that, so from an employer's perspective, there's lots of advice, and that our advocacy that we do within the CIPD about breaking down the bias and the prejudice which can exist there about actually it isn't just entry roles. It's like, I would also liken this, for example, with other groups of people, whether it's over 50s or people with convictions, for example, where there can be assumptions that, oh, they're only suitable for these roles. It's all about, again, working with those, that's where the third sector really come in. There's lots of different organisations. So Breaking Barriers, for example, I know work within this particular space. There's plenty of, we actually do a specific mentoring programme for people in this situation. So, and it can be, again, working with on a one-to-one basis with somebody who can help you look for the right type of role commensurate with your skills and experience. That's really where we add the help. There quite possibly are other specific programs, but ours is more about looking on that one-to-one basis and helping somebody find the right thing for us. We've got some pretty good outcomes as well on that. So again, I'd say please do afterwards, when you share the details of our programs, do get in touch with us.
Yeah, that's great. And that leads me great into my next question, which is, so obviously the main purpose of today was about sharing our employability toolkits, which are free, accessible for anyone who's looking for work or supporting anyone else. Are there any other resources or tools other than the ones you've just mentioned that you'd signpost people to, that you've seen in your experience have had a really positive impact for job seekers?
So I think that alongside the sort of mentoring program I mentioned, we've got there's lots of webinars that we've done as the CIPD Trust, which are focused on different areas of finding jobs and different barriers that get in the way. And these are all free and you can just access them via our website. So we can certainly share links to that. We've also got within our website lots of other examples of, we signpost to other resources as well. So I can't think of any specific ones off the top of my head, but do start with us and then see where you go from there, I would say.
Absolutely. Ooh. Helpful if I came off mute. And then I suppose one final question, unless anybody's got anything else they want to put in the chat, that came in ahead of the event, was very specific to your previous role, Sally. So there was a question came in that said, given your background in building impact frameworks at City and Guilds, does the Trust hold equivalent impact data for its e-learning pathways, or do you kind of limit your rigorous measurement at the moment to your mentoring programs?
So if I understand that correctly, because I think, so yes, just to give a bit more context to everyone else as well. So the work that I did at City and Guilds and both at CIPD is very much the Trust and the Foundation, very much we put focus on it, created an impact framework to measure the difference of what we're doing. So for example, with these mentoring programs, there's no point in doing them if no one ever gets into a job. So they could be nice experiences for people, but that's not our aim. And so what we did was both at City and Guilds and at CIP is look at what is it that we are doing and how can we measure that people actually do get into work. I would say from CIPD's perspective, it's very much at this stage around the mentoring programs and the employability work we do, as opposed to the e-learning. I think that's probably referring to some of the CIPD main kind of work, and that's not currently applied to that.
Yeah, perfect. We've had a couple of questions that have been answered in the chat elsewhere, but there's one around kind of everything that we're talking about. I suppose from our perspective with the co-op toolkits, but also everything that you've spoken about, do you see them as being relevant to people working in further education? And so we've said yes from a toolkits perspective, but I assume that you would say the same from kind of any of your programs, in that they're relevant to anyone, regardless of sector.
100%. I feel like, a lot of this stuff, whatever it's dressed up in, it's the good grounding sort of foundational pieces that people need to do and need to know in order to get work. And I think that that applies across the board. And I think it's really important as well that those people working in education and in some of the organizations that support people into employment understand what it's like for employers and the things that they look at. So I think it's really important that they're familiar as well with the information and advice.
Yeah, and one really important question that's just coming is, are your mentoring programs available all around the UK?
They are. It does. We match people on an individual basis. So it doesn't. Sometimes it will all depend if we can find somebody appropriate to work with you. A lot of them are virtual. So obviously that means that that gives us it could be on WhatsApp or it can be on Teams or something. In some areas we do it face to face as well, but again it will depend if we have the right people. So get in touch and we can see what we can do.
Perfect. Well, I think that is everything. That's been really, really helpful. Just people knowing that mentoring support is out there and that there is this army, I suppose, of HR professionals who are looking to use their skills to support people into work, I think is brilliant. So thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you.
And if you can send me everything you've talked about, we'll pop it in the follow-up email. Thank you. Right, I think that brings us to the end of the session. We're a little bit ahead of time. But in terms of next steps, we will be sending an email out which has the recording. It has all the links to everything that everyone has spoken about today. And we will get to any questions that we haven't been able to answer in the chat in that email as well. And by attending this session today, what you also have access to is some future sessions. So these will be run in partnership with an organisation called QA. They are running two kind of different sessions for anyone who would wish to attend. Again, all free, no cost to signing up. One is Ace Your Job Interview, which, as it says here, is a practical 2-hour session, which is packed with tips and guidance to help you make a great first impression. So there will be some on July the 9th, and also we will share some future dates in July and August. And the next one topic that I think most of us, our speakers, if not all, have spoken about today is AI. So an interactive 2-hour session exploring the latest developments in AI and what they mean for us in practice. So the first session on that is on July the 21st at 10 a.m. And there are further sessions planned across the rest of 26. So you will get an email and it will have the details of everything in there. In terms of the employability toolkit, we really appreciate your feedback as we continue to shape these toolkits. So we don't want them to be something that we've created, stuck on a web page and never gets used. The value for us is in people using them. And as you saw from Suzanne's brilliant session earlier, there's such a wealth of information out there. It's about how we can tailor that properly to the people who are looking for work at the moment. So please do share your feedback in the feedback link that we'll send out with that email, and help us to help people into work. It would be really appreciated. So thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it's been a big chunk out of your day, but hopefully you have taken something away useful from it, and thanks very much.